Well, that was an awful close call, I'd say. It's a good thing that me and my brothers caught that little green booger with the tentacles before it started converting all the living things into not-so-living things around here. And with that, our little base here is completely and utterly safe. For about another day or so. It would appear, though, that our next attack is going to be coming from the clankers, but no doubt the flood will be incorporated in very shortly. We also still have an orbital bombardment going on in the area from our previous wave, which is causing a little bit of an issue, as one might imagine. The biggest issue that we're currently facing because of the orbital bombardment are some infrastructure damage, you could say, like here, where we're having our power cut off to the geothermal generator, which is powering all of our defenses. And even our defenses themselves seem to be taking quite a pounding also, so we need to repair all of that. Before the next wave of droids would arrive, we would end up having a trade caravan of outlanders coming to, well, trade. Hopefully they might just help us out a little bit. It does appear that they're going to have an ample opportunity to do so, as the droids are dropping right in on top of the base. As the clankers began to fall in on top of us, the outlanders didn't seem all that bothered, until the pods burst forth and they started getting blasted into oblivion. Of course, we had pulled ourselves away to the side just outside of our defenses to begin attacking them, and while they were focused on the outlanders, we would unleash hellfire. Foolish droids, as the most of them were in one large group. It was quite easy to take them out, and all we had to really do after that was pick off a few stragglers that were roaming around the area trying to find us, and they found us all right. For our reward, given that we don't really need steel or weapons at the moment, we chose to have a xeno-human joining us. The handsome, gray little lad would end up landing sometime later, and as you can see, he appears to be a waster. I don't really think he'll be able to contribute all that much in terms of battle prowess and firepower, but maybe we'll let him clean the floors. And I hope that he has a mighty big broom and mop bucket, as well as a mop, of course, because we have a mighty big mess and plenty of droids to cut up into steel, as well as plenty of repairs to make. However, we did also have some trading to do as well. We had an exotic goods trader in orbit around the planet, and we were going to be purchasing some components and advanced components, more importantly, from them. These are going to be used for a very important project very shortly, but I'm afraid that they're only a mere drop in the bucket. And so we're also going to be building ourselves an assembly production table so that we can actually begin turning our normal components into advanced components, giving us even more of those sweet, succulent little metal hunks. However, our production of these advanced components would be briefly interrupted by a stunningly good-looking stranger who wanted to talk. Highly unusual, but okay. They were easy to spot on the outskirts of the base wearing nothing but red clothing, and it would seem that they just wanted to join us. They wanted to make a deal where we could have them live with us, and essentially they are very charismatic, I suppose, and they would end up helping us out in general. So whatever, we ended up accepting them, as we have to take care of civilians, and also, of course, they did come with a weapon. I doubt that revolver is going to do much to any droids, but it could be useful against the flood perhaps, or maybe we could even plop a blaster into her little frail hands. We'll see. Here's hoping she doesn't immediately begin having mental breaks, because our bedrooms are still in shambles, and we're working hard to try to fix those, but I think she'll have to sleep outside, at least for tonight, and maybe tomorrow night too. Introduced with a bolt of lightning as they fail, shortly thereafter we would have more of these demolition droids coming to attack us. Now luckily, I think that they all are wielding grenades just like last time, except for maybe a handful of them, so I think we should be able to handle them quite easily. Of course, to prime them for the battle, we would begin striking these sorry hunks of metal with our mortar. We would continue with several of these strikes, and this was actually working out pretty well for us, I would say. And now that we've weakened their ranks by quite a bit, and also because we're finally out of mortar shells for the time being, we would send in our clone marine brethren to finish them off. And things went rather smoothly, I suppose. This time around, we would end up going with a mini turret drop, as our previous ones have been destroyed, and also we have plenty of cash, and we're not all that interested in trading with anyone. anyone, as we just did. As I've mentioned several times, mini turrets aren't going to be all that good for droids, but now that we have the Flood attacking us in this rotation of waves, they would be perfect for taking out infection forms rather easily. Even with us working around the clock, we were still having a lot of issues around the base with repairs, and most importantly, with just filth everywhere. Steel slag chunks and dead clanker corpses. We were having a lot of trouble moving all of these without causing some extreme break risks to our civilians that were staying here with us. Again though, you know, it really didn't help that a lot of the time they were occasionally having to sleep outside due to their beds being destroyed. Yeah. Our lack of constructing new beds was also due in part to the fact that we were working on that special little project that we needed all those advanced components for. I introduced to you, my friends, a shield generator. If all goes to plan, this little bad boy should protect us completely from any sieges or anything like that, mortar shells falling on top of us, as well as orbital bombardments and meteorites, and also even having enemies drop in right on top of us. After this, we would also begin stocking up on more mortar shells. Reason being is because the next wave that we're going to be dealing with is going to be the Flood, our first wave of them since they were introduced to the planet. Assuming they decide to plan before they attack for a little bit, we should be able to blow them up very easily with some mortar shells, as they're very susceptible to explosions and fire. The unfortunate part about this wave is the fact that, yes, indeed, they were going to be planning before they attack, meaning they would be in a static area here and we could fire our mortar at them, but they were coming from two separate sides with two separate groups, and we only have one mortar, of course. The decision who to attack first was quite easy because as we were prepping our mortar, the group coming from the northeast was coming straight for us. So of course we would send in our clone marines and easily take out these walking corpses. As these three battled the Flood in the northeast, our other clone marine would finally shoot off those mortar shells at the group that's waiting in the southwest. Now this party can really get started. It's time for us to hunt down every last remaining one of these combat forms and infection forms and burn them to the ground, quite literally with our blasters, I might add. The perfect weapons while fighting this type of enemy. Now then, for our reward, an orbital bombardment targeter wasn't exactly ideal because, well, we had a few already. We also had a shit ton of meteorites that had recently fallen, so some steel, wood, and components seemed like the best choice, and indeed, I think it is. It does appear that our next wave is going to be the largest that we have ever seen yet, with 141 clankers strong. Now that is a lot of firepower. We'll need to be ready. Now most of these resources weren't all that great, right? These are not things that we can't get on our own, but since we're spending a lot of our time repairing and rebuilding, it will save us from having to collect things like wood, which we would use for our storage and also for our kitchen and things like that. Not that we really needed to cook all that much, but you never know how long we're going to be here. Even with the amount of steel that we got as a reward, we would still continue stockpiling quite a bit from all of the droid corpses as well as steel slag chunks that they were landing in. It's a very hot commodity at the moment, and we want to collect as much as humanly possible to have stockpiled. Speaking of droids, we have those 141 that have come to attack us, unfortunately coming in two separate groups. Maybe that's fortunate, we don't know just yet, but here's hoping they'll soon be on our machining table getting turned into steel chunks. I had also considered using EMP shells, but I forgot to make them, so we're still just going to be using some high explosive shells. Not that that was really a problem, as it was taking out the vast majority of B1 battle droids quite quickly and quite easily. After pounding many of them like a metallic sentient drum with our shells, they would begin their assault against our base. We of course would hide in between all those meteorites that fell, giving us a lot of cover and making it easy to pick them off. Unfortunately, in the heat of battle, poor Fur, our waster who had recently joined us, was blasted to death. The reason being is because he was in a psychotic wandering state at the time, and there was no way for us to save him without crushing his head like a grape under the might of one of our clone marines. R.I.P. little fella, R.I.P. Even with our comrade fallen though, we would continue fighting the good fight, taking cover behind find our meteorites and blasting these filthy clankers into oblivion, as you well know. As much as I try to make it seem like this was an extremely easy fight, I am afraid to say, but it actually wasn't as easy as we hoped. We were taking a lot of damage, not only sustained to our soldiers themselves, but of course their armor, deteriorating it even further. Eventually, though, we would end up winning at the end of the day, and it was yet again time for us to choose our reward. I didn't want to choose a xeno-human as we had just lost a civilian a few moments ago, and I'd hate to lose another, especially so soon. Ghouls would be basically useless against the Flood due to melee combat, would end up getting them infected, and of course the droids would blast them into next week, so we ended up going with a leather drop. Now, I can understand some of you might be thinking that these leathers weren't going to be all that useful, and even if a ghoul or xeno-human might die pretty quickly, they might be a bit more useful. However, we planned on using our new little supply of leather for plenty of sandbags around all of our turrets that are already built, as well as new ones that we're building, like a charged turret. Obviously, of course, we would also end up giving our waster civilian companion a proper burial. Lay easy, old friend. You didn't really do much of anything, but you've earned it, I guess. Then after that, we would continue on forward with our new defenses, like new types of turrets and sandbags and yada yada yada. The same old thing that you've seen 1,000 times, no doubt. And the hope was, of course, that this would help us with our attack that was coming from the Flood once more. However, based on how they planned on attacking us, we decided to go out in a group and try to pick off as many of the infection forms as possible, so that our turrets wouldn't be completely overwhelmed and thus destroyed so quickly after being constructed, which almost definitely would have happened with the amount of infection forms as well as carrier forms carrying even more of those infection forms. And once again, we were victorious. With yet another defeated wave of crippled enemies under our belt, it was time for us to choose our next reward. We had three choices once again: a prosthetic drop, a fuel drop, but also a legendary gear drop. As I'm sure you could imagine, I would end up going with the middle choice here, and our legendary gear would drop in right on top of us, with it being some equipment from RimWorld, like our Space Marines equipment, as well as some clone armor and a blaster. All of our fine Marines, as well as even some of our civilians, would be given the opportunity to go through this gear and pick out what they like. And I do think that equipping this is going to be an absolute godsend for us, and will help us achieve our goal of, I guess, leaving the planet, but also survival in general. Besides, the vast majority of the time, our normal people here, that I refer to as civilians, haven't really been fighting all that much, or if they do, they kind of hang back and fire from a distance. Now with some better armor, that shouldn't be much of an issue. I also noticed that we had a landed ship on the planet. Now this is a ship that can take us off-world and into the stars, where we can finally link up with our other clone brethren in the Empire. Although it is very far away, meaning that we're going to have to travel very far away. Although I don't plan on doing this on foot, of course. We are going to be building ourselves a vehicle that is large enough to take every single one of our members to this ship to the stars. But a vehicle of such caliber is going to require a lot of fuel, so we started refining some by using the nearby wood we've been cutting down. In the meantime, while most of our members were prepping for the construction of a mighty vehicle such as this, we would have one or two of our Marines going out throughout the day each day and killing off many of the Flood hounds that were being resurrected by their spores and by their infection forms. Keep in mind, if this isn't done, we could end up with a major Flood hive in the area where they would just continue spawning tank forms and pure forms, and it would continue growing until it took over the entire map. And even though we're going to be leaving, we are also going to be improving this base just in case, because, well, we really don't know when we're going to be leaving, so we started building some XXL batteries to store all of our additional power. A little bit off topic, but I also noticed that our clone Marine by the name of Ren Ben had started adorning a beautiful red top hat from the beautiful lady who joined us earlier. I don't know, but it looks good on him, and I think he should keep it. But no amount of gorgeous, beautiful hats are going to keep the 21st wave from coming. It once again appears to be a bunch of droids dropping into the area scattered all around. Luckily, our shield would protect us from them being dropped right on top of us, but they were still pretty frequent on the outskirts of our base. With them scattered all about, it's times like these that I'm very, very happy that we have so many members, and especially that our more civilian members have plenty of armor, as we would all have to rush to our own little corners of our defenses to try and fend off these filthy sabotage droids. Luckily, they seem to mostly be interested in melee combat against us without any real range capabilities, making this wave a piece of cake. And finally, when it was time for us to choose our reward, as if right on cue, we ended up choosing car parts. I think this might be the first time I've ever even seen this option. I swear this isn't scripted, but I'm quite glad to get these parts as they are going to be perfect. We were tickled plum pink about these new parts, although we ended up mostly getting wheels, which our vehicle of choice is not going to use at all. This is the Goliath drop pod or shuttle or whatever you want to call it. Essentially, it is a large lander that can contain all of our members and can take us a very far distance away. We would put an absolutely top priority on trying to create all the parts required for this flying behemoth, or Goliath I should say, no pun intended of course, until Renbin, the only one who had a high enough crafting skill to make some of the required parts, ended up going into a psychotic wandering state, which really sucked ass. Looks like our escape is going to be delayed a bit, at least until this top hat wearing silly Billy snaps out of it, for God's sake. Until then, the 22nd wave is upon us. Once again, it is the Flood, but this time it is nothing but pure forms, and as you can see, the pure forms end up creating a hive in the corner of the map. Not only that, but they also have some very large tank units and flood carriers who are coming right for us. Thanks to the combined might of our marine civilians and even our turrets' automated defenses, we would actually be able to hold them off quite well. After taking on the first wave of their assault, we would actually move up with our troops and begin attacking the remaining enemies, somewhat preemptively taking cover behind all of the meteorites per the usual, and winning once more, thankfully, without any casualties or really any injuries. Actually, watching back the footage as I narrate, I realized that we didn't really move up until the end, but hey, either way, we ended up winning, and it's time for a reward. The obvious choice here maybe was a Psylink Neuroformer, although I didn't really think it'd be that useful, as we hadn't really planned on staying here long enough to develop those types of skills, our psychic skills, so we ended up going with a serum drop because we also had plenty of food and medicine. However, the serum we ended up getting was 10 ghoul resurrection serums, so it was kind of a complete waste. Whatever. You know me, the king of bad choices. There's always next time, no worries. But while still on the topic of getting the hell off of this planet, we were finally finishing up some of the last remaining parts that we would need for our Goliath. While Renbin was dealing with that, the rest of the squad would actually be fighting off the Flood, and we would end up sending in a small squad to assault the hive, to finally finish it off once and for all, before it gets out of hand, you could say. But as the fight began to rain on in the pouring rain, and our blaster fire began to scorch the Flood hive, we noticed that we had some of the wildlife in the area starting to attack us. Peculiar, even odd, actually, but that's when we realized that the Flood hive had sent out some type of psychic wave driving all the animals crazy. We were outnumbered. Thankfully, we had a big ace up our sleeve. Well, I think that takes care of that. Now that the hive was finally taken care of, and we don't have endless hordes, at least from the hive, coming to attack us every 5 seconds, we could finish up our Goliath, or so I thought. Turns out I got a little excited and ahead of myself, and we're missing quite a few advanced components, unfortunately. Not to worry though, Rinbin is on the job with his beautiful little red top hat, and he is working it, baby. And as we were finally building our Goliath, we ended up having our next raid. This wave would end up being several of the assassin droids with their sniper rifles and of course their grenades. One of the most deadly classes and type of these droids, as we well know from experience previously. Technically, we could stick around and fight them off and get one more reward, but our Goliath was already finished. Out of pride, we wanted to show that we could easily defeat this raid, I'm sure of it, but we did have other people to think of with our more civilian folks joining us, and they were distracted by an Outlander caravan that had entered the area, so we decided to hop in and head on out. And as we began preparing our new giant shuttle for launch, the assassin droids began rushing in to try to stop us before we could take off. Too little, too late, you dastardly fiends. I forget how beautiful this planet is from all the way up here when things aren't always trying to kill us, which we've rarely seen. Anyhow, we began headed for our landed ship. Meanwhile, back at the base, the droids were destroying all of our defenses and were ripping the place to shreds looking for us. Little do they know, we were about to make our grand escape. As we were coming into the ship, we had a bit of a hot landing, you could say. Oh, well, luckily, I think everyone made it out in one piece, though. Hey, lads, but no, for real, we almost died. On a brighter note, though, our fight is finally over, and it's time for us to get the hell out of here. Now, all we have to do is to activate the ship and hop aboard. Let's give this bad boy a bit of a jump start, shall we? Oh, no, what's this? Let's see. Reacting, hibernation. I'll carry the one. Shit! It looks like it's going to take 15 days for this damn ship to power back up. And when we start it, that means we're going to have more enemies tracking our location and coming here to fight us. And I guess we're not quite finished yet, are we? I'll see you later.